The air was still the night it all began. Not a single leaf rustled. Not a bird dared to sing. And even the stars seemed to retreat behind thick clouds, as if they were shielding themselves from what was about to unfold. In that silence, a storm was brewing. Not of wind or rain, but betrayal, envy, and silent prayers whispered into the dark. You had no idea your kindness would paint a target on your back. You never expected that being good, honest, and generous would make you the villain in someone else's story. But the truth is, when your light shines too bright, it threatens those still hiding in their own darkness. It started slow, subtle, the side eyes, the forced smiles, the whispering that stopped the moment you walked into a room. You convinced yourself it was all in your head, that maybe they were having a bad day or you were just overthinking. But deep down, something inside you, maybe a piece of your soul, felt it. Something was off. You were becoming the target. They tried to sabotage your work. They smiled to your face while stabbing your back. They made up stories, twisted your words, and even manipulated others to turn against you. The very people you once trusted started acting like strangers wearing familiar faces. All because your peace threatened their chaos, and your success reminded them of their own failure to rise. Still, you didn't fight back. You kept showing up. You kept working hard. You stayed quiet when they mocked you. You prayed when they plotted. And that confused them. Your silence, it unnerved them, because they expected you to break, to scream, to crumble. But you didn't. Not because you didn't feel the pain, but because you were protected by something they couldn't understand. God had placed a shield around you. And while they thought they were destroying you, what they didn't see was what was happening behind the curtain. You were being rebuilt. Every time they lied, your faith grew stronger. Every time they pushed you down, your knees hit the ground, not in defeat, but in prayer. While they laughed thinking they were burying you, they forgot something crucial. They were actually planting you. Because when God wants to elevate someone, he first allows the earth to shake beneath their feet, not to destroy them, but to strengthen their roots. So when the time comes, their rise becomes unstoppable. You began to change. Quietly, you stopped explaining yourself. You stopped entertaining negativity. You stopped begging for love and started respecting yourself. And that shift, it terrified them, because the one they thought they had broken was now glowing in silence. But just when you thought things couldn't get darker, something strange began to happen. People around them started falling apart, not physically, but spiritually. Their joy started draining. Their peace disappeared. They smiled, but it was forced. Laughed, but it lacked soul. Something terrible was unfolding in their world, and they had no idea why. But you knew, because when someone tries to curse what God has blessed, it never ends well. See, what they didn't realize is that God watches in silence, but he never ignores injustice. He gives them time. Time to repent. Time to stop. Time to return to righteousness. But when they persist, when they keep playing with fire thinking they'll never get burned, that's when everything starts to fall. One of them lost their job suddenly. Another got exposed in a lie they had spun months ago. Another one, your closest former friend, was humiliated publicly in the same way they tried to humiliate you. It was like a mirror had turned on them. Every dark deed they threw into the universe was now clawing its way back to them, piece by piece. And the twist? You didn't wish it upon them. You didn't seek revenge. You weren't watching from the sidelines with a vengeful grin. In fact, you were too busy healing, rebuilding your life, finding joy in the smallest things. That's the true blessing. While they were drowning in the consequences of their cruelty, you were rising in peace. Quietly, divinely, you started receiving calls from people who once avoided you. Apologies came, some sincere, some soaked in guilt, not regret. The same people who once doubted you were now admiring your strength, wondering how you survived, how you managed to smile despite all the storms. But they didn't know your secret. Your strength wasn't yours alone. It came from the nights you cried alone, from the prayers you whispered when your voice shook, from the moments you stared at the ceiling, feeling forgotten, only to feel warmth in your heart, reminding you that God had never left your side. It was divine warfare, and you didn't even have to fight. Because when God decides to defend you, your enemies don't stand a chance. They can plot, lie, manipulate. But when God says enough, the tables don't just turn. They flip with thunder. One by one, their masks fell. And behind each mask was fear. Not of you, but of what you now represented. A walking reminder that no matter how dark things get, no matter how many betray you, God always has a final say. You weren't supposed to win. According to them, you were supposed to lose everything. But instead, you found peace. You found purpose. You found yourself. And that is what haunts them. Because the terrible thing that happened was not the disaster in their lives. It was the revelation that they could never destroy what was divinely protected. Now, they live with a burden, not just of guilt, but of realizing that all the time they spent trying to destroy you, they only ended up cursing themselves. Because no one can mess with God's timing. No one can block blessings that are sent with your name on them. So if you're listening to this now, wondering why it all happened the way it did, let me remind you, they tried to destroy you, but instead, something terrible happened. They awakened your divine purpose. And now, their attempts lie in ruins while your soul rises in silence. You're not just surviving, you're glowing. You're walking proof that God doesn't just rescue. He restores, He resurrects, and He reveals. This was never about them. It was always about you, about the calling over your life, about the lesson in your pain, about the strength you didn't know you had until it was all you had left. Morning didn't feel like morning anymore for them. Once filled with arrogance and self-assurance, their lives were now coated in unease, like they were waking up in shadows even when the sun was shining. They laughed a little less, spoke a little softer, looked over their shoulders more often than they blinked. Something terrible had crept into their lives, a haunting realization. They had touched something sacred. They had tried to ruin someone chosen by God. But you? Your mornings had become sacred, peaceful, a kind of peace that the world didn't give, so the world couldn't take away. You no longer feared walking into the same spaces where you once felt unwelcomed. You no longer flinched when you heard your name whispered behind closed doors, because now your soul had armor, spiritual armor. The tables hadn't just turned, they'd flipped, and those who once mocked your faith now feared your silence, because in that silence, they began to feel the weight of their own actions. Guilt clung to them like second skin, and no matter how they tried to hide behind pride or pretend it was all a joke, they knew God was not mocked. The punishment wasn't theatrical. It was slow, subtle, precise. Their wins stopped making sense. Opportunities slipped from their hands. Relationships crumbled. Peace escaped them. Because karma didn't have to scream, it whispered. And you just kept walking. Forward. See, when you walk with God, He doesn't always send thunder to shake your enemies. Sometimes He blesses you so loudly, your success becomes their echo of regret. And that's exactly what started happening. One offer, one open door, one unexpected favor after another. Your life, once stagnant, broken, and bruised, began to bloom. Not all at once, but steadily. Like the earth had finally heard your pain and decided to birth miracles in your honor. Remember those nights you cried, asking God, why me? Those nights were not ignored. They were collected, every tear stored, every sigh remembered, every heartbreak recorded. And now, He was turning those sorrows into seeds. Seeds that began to bloom into opportunities, into new connections, into strength, into clarity. What they didn't know was, while they were attacking you, God was preparing a stage, not for revenge, but for revelation. He didn't just want to bring you out of the fire. He wanted to walk you out with no burn marks, so that when people looked at you, they would ask, how are you still standing? And that's the moment God steps in and says, because I never left. One by one, the same people who doubted you started watching you, not out of love, but out of confusion. Because you didn't just survive. You bloomed in barren places. You smiled after storms. You forgave without apology. And that was divine. But here's the twist. Forgiveness was your next test. When they came back, not all, but some wanted to talk, to explain, to justify. You had a choice, not just whether to let them back in, but whether to let them go from your heart, not because they deserved peace, but because you did. And forgiveness, it wasn't for them. It was for your freedom, because your destiny was too big to carry old bitterness. Your blessings were too sacred to poison with resentment. So you forgave, not loudly, not dramatically, but in quiet prayers, letting their names leave your lips with peace. That was power, real power. Now, doors started flying open. People you never expected to notice your work did. Places you thought were beyond your reach welcomed you. Peace wrapped around you like morning sun, and your glow, unmistakable. That glow wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was God's signature on your story. Proof that everything meant to destroy you ended up promoting you. But let's be clear, it wasn't easy. You had to heal in silence. You had to walk alone. You had to rebuild yourself with shaky hands and a broken heart. You had to keep trusting even when nothing made sense. You had to face nights where even prayer felt heavy. But you didn't quit. You didn't fold. And that made heaven move. And now you become the living message that when the world tries to destroy someone God has chosen, all they succeed in doing is pushing them into destiny. Now those who try to bring you down, they're living in confusion, because what they planned as your ending became your beginning. One of them, perhaps the ringleader, is now isolated, surrounded by shallow people who only came around for gain, not love. They look around and see you, not in person, but in memories. And those memories haunt them, not because of guilt alone, but because deep down they know they lost a soul that was genuine. They pushed away a light in their life. And now they live in the shadows of their choices. You, on the other hand, you're no longer bitter. You're wiser, softer, stronger. You have grown into someone even you didn't recognize a year ago. And now the world, it's starting to take notice. Because God doesn't just restore. He multiplies. And when he blesses you in public, after you were broken in private, it becomes a testimony, a message that no one, not even the darkest soul, can outwrite the story he's written over your life. So what you do now, you rise, you keep walking, keep shining, keep being the soul they tried to break. But never forget this. The terrible thing that happened, it wasn't punishment. It was protection. God let you walk through that pain so he could filter your circle, reveal hidden enemies, and position you for something greater. And now, it's your season, not of revenge, but of reward. So the next time you hear someone whisper, "How did they survive that?" Smile, because the truth is, you didn't just survive. You were reborn. And no one, not their lies, not their envy, not even their curses, could stop the blessings that are now flooding your life. Because when God steps in, it's already too late for your enemies.